3 weeks unemployed, 2 months rent overdue, and the brother who kept sending me listings from the council helpline. That was where I was when the ad appeared at the Brackfeld Labour Exchange, pinned to the corkboard between a notice about a missing cat and the flyer for a Zumba class on Wednesday evenings. Experienced domestic housekeeper required for private residence Mallow Lane. Live out position 4 days per week, competitive rates. References essential. Discretion appreciated. I remember thinking the last bit was odd. Discretion. Like they were worried I'd talk about the toilet lime scale at dinner parties. I've worked since I was 16. Office manager for 11 years at a logistics company that dissolved like sugar in the rain. One Friday they sent us all an email, very polite, very corporate, explaining that the company no longer existed. I applied for 117 jobs in the 3 weeks after. Got 2 interviews, no offers. The housekeeper position was the 118th. The interview was at the house itself. I took the 40-minute train from the city, then a 20-minute walk from Brackfeld station, along a road that got progressively quieter. Mallow Lane is a dead end. Weyrich House sits at the very bottom of it, behind a wrought iron gate that took me a full 2 seconds to open from the outside. I remember that detail now. I didn't think about it then. The house is beautiful. I want to be clear about that. Victorian, 3 stories, red brick with that warm amber quality that old brick gets in autumn afternoon light. Wisteria on the south face. A garden that was half immaculate, half completely wild. The kind of house that appears on television programs about restoration projects. Except it didn't look like it needed restoring. It looked like it was being maintained carefully by someone who knew exactly how it worked. Mssr. Theis was waiting by the door. She's the employer, a woman in her 60s, precise and thin-wristed, with the kind of posture that suggests she was raised somewhere that had opinions about posture. She smelled of dried lavender. She showed me through the house quickly, the way you'd show someone a car you were selling, pointing out the good things, keeping the pace brisk so you didn't dwell on the others. Kitchen. Large cast iron range, copper pots on hooks, flagstone floors. The range requires daily attention, she said. Clean room, pleasant room, smell of old cooking and something faintly sweet beneath. Dried flowers maybe, or old wood. I liked it. The ground floor, parlor, study, dining room, all well maintained, all a bit dim. I visit Tuesdays and Fridays, she said. Otherwise, you'll have the house to yourself. I thought, 4 days a week, alone in a Victorian house, no management breathing down my neck. I've had worse arrangements. She didn't show me the upper floors in detail. She gestured toward the staircase. The east wing requires basic maintenance, dusting, airing, nothing complicated. She did not show me the east wing. She used the word airing the way you'd use the word contained. She didn't show me the basement at all. I signed the contract at the kitchen table. She produced it from a folder, already typed, already dated, waiting for me. She had a pen that appeared to contain regular black ink, but when I signed, the signature looked slightly darker than the ink warranted. I told myself I was being precious. I signed. The rate was good. Better than good. Better than my logistics manager rate, if I'm being completely honest. I said yes before she finished speaking. First day. I arrived at 8 in the morning. Let myself in with the key she'd left under the mat. She'd told me this. I hadn't discovered it dramatically. I want to be accurate. And started in the kitchen. 4 hours of cleaning a kitchen that was honestly already pretty clean. Light scale on the range, some dust, the usual archaeology of someone else's cooking. The copper pots were show pots. They'd been hung for decoration, not use. The actual cooking was done on a small electric hob set up near the back door. I cleaned that too. No sign of recent use. The house had been empty, I guessed, for 2 or 3 weeks. The last housekeeper must have left recently. I was rinsing out the mop bucket in the sink when I noticed the window. The kitchen has 2 windows. The one above the sink faces north. It should look out at the side return, the bit between the house and the garden wall, a narrow channel of brick and damp and nothing much. I know this because I'd walked around the exterior of the house before going in. The north wall faces a passageway, 3 feet wide, brick wall, some moss. The north window shows a walled garden, full afternoon sun, a stone bench, flowers that shouldn't be in bloom in October, something pale, clustered with thick waxy petals. The garden looks warm, enclosed, perfect. I went around to the north side of the house. Passageway, brick wall, moss, no garden, no bench, no flowers. I went back inside and looked out the north window again. Garden, bench, flowers in October sunlight. I was tired. The commute was an hour each way. I'd been cleaning for 4 hours. I decided the window was positioned at an angle I'd misjudged from outside. Possibly it actually faced slightly west, slightly south. I'd look at it with fresh eyes tomorrow. I filed it under architectural quirks and went home. Day 2. The east wing corridor required dusting. I'd been putting it off, not because of anything specific, just because corridors are my least favorite part of a house to clean. All that width, all that nothing. I took my supplies up the main staircase and turned right into the east wing. The wallpaper is original Victorian, pastoral scenes, sheep on hills, a farmhouse in the distance, figures working a field at harvest time. Nice enough, the kind of wallpaper that was expensive in 1890 and has become interesting through survival. I dusted the skirting boards and worked my way down. On the way back, I stopped at the third door from the end. The figure nearest the farmhouse had been harvesting grain when I came in, head down, scythe extended. On the way back, the figure's head was up, looking toward the right edge of the wallpaper, toward where I was standing. Trick of the light. I hadn't looked closely enough the first time. Pareidolia, the brain's tendency to read faces and positions where there's only pattern. I've noticed that kind of thing my whole life. You look, you move, the angle changes, the brain fills in the gap differently. I told myself this firmly. I went back to the kitchen. I ate my packed lunch, cheese sandwich, crisp packet, thermos of tea, and tried not to think about the fact that the corridor felt slightly longer on the way back than it had on the way in. I was cleaning the kitchen fireplace. It's decorative, sealed, but accumulates soot and dust in the bricks around. When I noticed the loose brick, it was a small thing. The lower left corner of the firebox interior has a brick that doesn't sit flush with the others, a gap of maybe half an inch. I pressed it experimentally. It moved. Not far, just enough to confirm it was loose. I worked it free. Behind it was a cavity about the size of a paperback book. Inside the cavity was a notebook, blue cover, spiral bound, the kind you buy at a pharmacy. Inside, neat handwriting in black ballpoint. Name at the top of the first page, Gretchen Paller. Underneath, observations in case someone needs them. The first page was dated 9 weeks before my start date. The last entry was dated 42 days after the first. The very last thing written in Gretchen Paller's notebook, in letters that pressed harder than the rest, was this: "Do not go into the basement." Gretchen Paller was meticulous. I can say that with confidence because I read her notebook 3 times in the kitchen of Veyrich House, sitting at the table where she'd presumably also sat, while the afternoon light faded to gray outside both windows. The south window showing the proper south side of the house, leaves on the flagstone path, and the north window still showing its impossible garden in its impossible perpetual afternoon. She'd been an agency housekeeper. 48 years old, the notebook said. She'd written a brief introduction as if she expected the notebook to be found by someone who didn't know her. Smart. She'd worked domestic positions for 15 years. She was, in her own estimation, difficult to rattle. She noted this in the same way I might note it, as a professional credential. The first week of entries reads like a workplace log. What she cleaned, what she found, what needed attention. On day 3, she mentioned the north window. On day 5, she measured it. She'd brought a tape measure on day 5 specifically to measure the north window, which tells you something about the kind of person Gretchen Paller was. The window's position, she noted, was inconsistent with the exterior geometry of the house by approximately 14 inches. She didn't say, "This is impossible." She said, "The discrepancy requires explanation." That is a person who has her head screwed on correctly. Week 2. She measured the east wing corridor. Interior measurement 62 feet. Exterior measurement taken from the front garden with the same tape measure 61 feet and 2 inches. She checked it twice. 14-inch discrepancy in the corridor. Possible explanation: architectural eccentricity, measurement error. Will remeasure next week. Week 3. East wing corridor interior 62 feet and 4 inches. Same exterior measurement 61 feet and 2 inches. The discrepancy had grown by 2 inches in a week. She wrote, "This is not measurement error." There was a page after that where she described the wallpaper figures, methodically, sketching them in pencil, noting which direction each figure faced, dating the sketch. By the end of week 3, she had 8 sketches. The figures had moved in every one of them. Week 4. She found something in the plaster of the 3rd floor landing. On close examination, the plaster on the north wall of the 3rd landing, approximately at shoulder height under oblique light only, resolved into features. I am aware this may be pareidolia. I have photographed it. The photograph is inconclusive but suggestive of a face, mouth open, one hand visible as if pressed against the interior of the plaster. I will examine this again. She examined it again. The face had eyes by week 5. The eye area was previously smooth. It is not smooth now. There are shallow depressions consistent with orbital structure. I have confirmed this is not pareidolia. The photograph from week 4 shows these depressions were absent. Something is developing in the plaster of the 3rd landing. Week 5 also contained her description of the basement. She hadn't opened it. The door under the main staircase, 3 padlocks, she noted, all different makes, as if each had been added at a different time by different people for the same reason. She listened at the door. She wrote, "Sound from behind the door at approximately 3 a.m. Low, rhythmic, organic. Possible pipe expansion, possible building movement. Not compatible with known building acoustics. Consistent. Once per 10 seconds. She'd corrected that, crossed out once per 10 seconds and written 6 times per minute. A resting heartbeat. I put the notebook down and listened to the house. Nothing. The clock in the hall ticking, but I realized it was running slightly fast. Had been since I'd started. I'd noticed it and put it down to an old mechanism. Now I sat there and watched it, and it gained 2 minutes in the time I sat reading the notebook.
So that's what that is.
She'd left one entry I couldn't make sense of. Partway through week 6, the last complete week, she wrote, "Note, the south wall, the south window. I should have looked there first. If you're reading this, look at the south." The sentence cut off. She started a new line. "They know I know. I can feel the change in the walls. There is warmth in the walls of the east corridor now. This did not happen before. Do not go into the basement." And then, nothing. That was the last written entry. Gretchen Paller had worked at Weyrich House for 42 days. She had left before her 6-week contract was completed. Or she had not left. I was trying to decide what to do. Whether to call the police, whether to go home, whether to call my brother and have him talk me out of what I was beginning to think, when I heard the front door. Mssr. Theis. It was Wednesday. Not Tuesday, not Friday. She came on Tuesdays and Fridays. She was standing in the kitchen doorway in her good coat, looking at the notebook on the table with an expression that was neither surprised nor concerned, just patient.
Fascinating.
"You found Gretchen's notes," she said.
I did. Do you know where Gretchen is?
Theis looked at me for a moment, then she looked at the notebook.
What does that mean?
Theis crossed to the kitchen table and sat down, not at the chair where I'd been reading, but at the head of the table, her house, her chair.
12. 3 weeks. I have 3 weeks left. I had 3. No.
I said nothing. My hands were flat on the table, not shaking, which I was slightly proud of.
21/12 waste.
The one before her. She said it the way you'd say the motto before last.
How many housekeepers have you sent here? And where are they now?
She smiled. It was a precise, measured smile, the kind that a person practices until it looks natural. She stood up and buttoned her coat.
The south wall. The south window. I should have looked there first. If you're reading this, look at the south. No. There's nothing here.
She left through the front door. I heard the gate close. I was on my feet, but I wasn't moving toward the door. I was standing in the middle of the kitchen, notebook in my hands. She had left the notebook there deliberately. She had sent 11 housekeepers to this house and called it selection. She was not a victim. She was the mechanism by which the house was fed. I had applied through the Brackfeld Labour Exchange to a job posting on a corkboard between a missing cat and a Zumba flyer. I had arrived, interviewed, signed a contract, and been handed a key. The notebook had been waiting in the fireplace. I had found it because I was meant to find it. Because finding it was what the house needed me to do. Understanding was not protection. It was the door opening wider. Here is what I know about panic. It is not useful. I've read the research. It narrows your cognition, elevates your cortisol, makes you stupid in exactly the ways you can't afford to be stupid. So I did not panic. I made tea. I made tea in Mr. Theis's kitchen using Mr. Theis's kettle, and I sat down and I thought about the situation methodically, which is what I've always done, which is apparently also exactly what this situation wanted me to do. Front door. I tried it. Opened fine from the inside. Good. I picked up my bag, coat on, walked to the front gate. The gate wouldn't open. Not stuck, not rusted. The mechanism engaged, the latch lifted, but the gate itself held. I put my weight against it. Nothing. I'm not a small woman. I'm 41. I spent 11 years moving furniture around offices. I know my own strength. The gate held with the solidity of something that had decided to hold. I went around to the back garden, proper south-facing garden, real, confirmed by exterior measurement, and looked for another gate. There was one, set into the far wall. It opened fine, from the inside. But behind the wall was not the lane that should be there. Behind the wall was another section of garden I'd never seen before. Longer. The wall on the far side of it was further than it should have been. I turned around. The house looked back at me from further away than it had been. I went back inside. Phone. I had signal when I arrived. I checked. 1 bar dropping. I called my brother. The call connected, rang twice, and cut to static. I tried again. Static immediately. I tried a text. The little wheel turned and turned and turned. Right, so that's what that is. I stood in the kitchen for a while, looking at the north window with its impossible garden in impossible afternoon light. Rain had started outside. Real rain on the real south window. Drops running down the glass like every haunted house scene you've ever seen on television. Thunder somewhere in the distance. Appropriate. I thought about what Gretchen had written. Do not go into the basement. She'd measured the corridor. She'd documented the wallpaper figures. She'd found the face in the plaster. She'd listened at the basement door and written down the sound of what was inside. And then she'd left me a message I didn't understand about the south wall, the south window, and something she should have looked at first. But she'd also written, do not go into the basement. And the thing is, when someone tells you not to go somewhere in a house that behaves the way this house behaves, you should probably, I should probably, not go. I went to the basement door. Gretchen's description was accurate. Under the main staircase, in the paneling. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. 3 padlocks, all different ages, all currently unlocked and hanging open, which they hadn't been when Gretchen was here. She described them as locked. Someone had unlocked them between then and now. Mssr. Theis, presumably, as part of the preparation. The handle was cold. I mean cold in the way that pipes get cold when you've had the heating off for weeks, not in the way of Gothic novels. This was a practical, physical cold. I opened the door. The smell came first. Not the rot I'd expected. Organic, yes, but not decay. More like the inside of a very old tree. Like heartwood. Like the earth a foot below topsoil where it goes permanently dark. The cold came off with the smell. A real cold. Not house temperature, but something below it. Something that didn't metabolize heat. There were no light fittings in the basement. None at all. I could see the ceiling from the top of the stairs, stone vaulting, and where the fittings should have been, there was just smooth stone. No bugs, no wiring that I could see. There was light. Not much, and not from a source I could name. The walls of the basement, which were raw stone and mortar, were threaded through with veins, networks of them, branching the way veins do, or the way rivers delta on a map, or the way roots walk through dark earth. The veins gave off a faint light, cold, blue, faintly violet, bioluminescent, moving very slightly with a rhythm I recognized, 6 times a minute. The walls of the basement pulsed. I don't mean they moved, not visibly, not dramatically. I mean the light shifted, slightly, with a regularity that corresponded to something internal. The vein network brightened and dimmed, not like breathing, like a heartbeat, the building's heartbeat. The absorbed faces in the plaster were visible on the north wall of the basement. Not suggested, not ambiguous, not a trick of the light. Faces, several of them. Lips pressed against the plaster from the inside. Eyes closed or sealed, I couldn't tell which. And hands, flattened, fingers spread, positioned as if the person whose hands they were had been pressing outward from inside the wall. I found Gretchen. East wall. The hand was visible at exactly the height you'd expect from a woman standing upright, shoulder height, the palm pressed flat, 5 fingers extended, the wrist disappearing into the plaster. The face beside it was not fully formed, not finished. The plaster there was newer, lighter in color, smoother, but the jawline was there, and the forehead, and in the expression preserved in the surface, not dread, not pain, something else, something I can't name. Gretchen had understood everything. The notebook was meticulous and complete, and she'd understood exactly what she was dealing with. And she was in the east wall. I went back up the stairs and closed the door. I stood in the kitchen and tried to be rational about what I'd seen, and I almost managed it. I was actually almost managing it, when I remembered something about the count. I had thought of myself as being on day 12 of the job. 12 working days, which meant roughly, I counted on my fingers, 3 weeks. I'd been in the house for 3 weeks. Gretchen's notebook. The process begins after 6 weeks. That's what I'd read. That's what I'd taken in. I had 3 weeks left before the 6-week mark. Then I thought about Gretchen's last full entry. Day 42. 42 calendar days, not 42 working days. She'd worked 4 days a week. 4 days times 6 weeks is 24 working days. She'd been there for 24 working days. I had been here for 12 working days. If the timeline was calendar days, 42 calendar days, how many calendar days had I been here? I counted again. 12 working days, 4 per week, 3 weeks of calendar time, 21 calendar days. 21 days, not 12. I was past the halfway point, and the clock in the hall had been gaining time since day 1. I spent what was left of the night in the kitchen. The kitchen felt safer, warmer, more lit, less of the east corridor's wrongness bleeding in. I sat at the table with Gretchen's notebook open to the last full pages, and I read them again carefully, looking for something I'd missed the first 3 times. The corridor measurement. I'd been so focused on what the growing interior dimensions meant that I hadn't thought about what they implied about time. Gretchen had measured the corridor at 62 feet interior, 61 feet 2 exterior on week 3. On week 5, she remeasured. The interior had grown by 4 more inches. By week 6, the final measurement, 63 feet and 7 inches. I took the tape measure from my cleaning kit. I went up to the east corridor. I measured. 63 feet and 10 inches. The house had grown 3 inches since Gretchen left. In a house growing at roughly an inch per week, that was 3 weeks of growth, which put me at 3 weeks after Gretchen's last entry, which confirmed my 21-day count. It also told me something else. Gretchen had left, or been absorbed, at day 42. 42 calendar days. I was at day 21, which meant if Gretchen's timeline was the standard, I had 21 days left, except the house had been getting progressively better at this for 130 years. And I was, apparently, exceptional. I went to the 3rd floor landing. The plaster face was there. The face Gretchen had documented from week 4 onward. The features had continued developing. The orbital structure she'd noted was now clearly a forehead, a brow, a nose. The mouth was slightly open, the hand pressed flat beneath it, palm outward. The nose? The nose of the face in the plaster was mine, not similar to mine, not coincidentally shaped the same way. Mine. The specific bridge height, the specific slight leftward lean from where I broke it falling off a bicycle at age 15, the specific shape of the nostrils. My nose, pressed into the plaster of the 3rd floor landing, on the face of whatever the house was building toward me. I went back downstairs. I read the notebook from the beginning again. The whole thing, faster this time, looking specifically for the thing I'd missed. The entry that cut off. The south wall, the south window. I should have looked there first. If you're reading this, look at the south. I'd been looking for a continuation. A next page. Something she'd written after. But there was no next page of written entry. There was a back cover. Inside the back cover of the notebook, in the cardboard itself, she'd pressed something, not written. I don't think she had the time to write. Pressed with a fingernail or a thumbnail into the soft inner surface of the cardboard. A diagram, a floor plan. The kitchen outlined roughly. 2 windows marked with small crosses. 1 cross circled twice. The south window. I stood at the south window. It faces the proper south side of the house. I know this because I verified it from outside when I started. The south side is the back garden, flagstone path, leaves on the ground, real. This window shows the real view. I opened the latch. It opened easily. I pushed the window out. The cold October air came in real and sharp. Proper outside cold, not the house cold, not the basement cold, but ordinary pre-dawn autumn air from outside. The house noticed. I heard it before I felt it. The settling sound, that wrong direction groan, the timbers expanding instead of contracting. But faster now, urgent. The clock in the hall, which I could hear from the kitchen, began ticking faster, not gaining 2 minutes per hour, gaining at a rate I could count. Tick, 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 double time, the mechanism running hot. The east corridor wallpaper. I didn't look. I heard it. Not a sound exactly, more of a pressure, a sensation in the walls that I felt through the floor under my feet, through the flagstones, through the soles of my shoes. The house was doing something with its walls. The kitchen walls were warmer. I put my hand flat on the wall by the window and yanked it back immediately. Not burning, but wrong. Too warm. The warmth of something alive. The house was very close now, very present. It knew exactly what I was doing. I got my bag. My cleaning kit bag had the tape measure in it, and I thought briefly about leaving it, and then I thought, no, Gretchen left everything, and she didn't make it. I took the bag. The window. I've never been a small person. The window was one of those Victorian sash windows, not designed for egress in any kind of hurry. The bottom sash opens maybe 18 inches before the mechanism blocks it. 18 inches is enough if you're motivated. The house's clock began to strike the hour, pre-dawn, 5 o'clock. I counted the strikes while I climbed through the window, while my coat caught on the latch and I tore a tree, while I dropped to the flagstone pad below. It's only a 5-foot drop, maybe 6, and landed badly on my left ankle and said something not worth printing. The South Garden. Real. Cold. October. I could see my breath. The south wall has a proper door set into it. I'd noticed it, I'd never tried it. It was locked. Of course it was locked. I looked at the wall itself. Victorian brick, standard 5 feet height, frost on the top. I put my cleaning kit bag over first and followed it. I ran down the lane toward the Brackfeld Road. My ankle hurt. I ran anyway. The house was behind me and I didn't look back. Not because of fairy tale rules about not looking back, but because I couldn't see a reason to. I already knew what I'd see. A handsome Victorian property in the early morning dark, all amber brick and wisteria, looking exactly like what it was not. I called the council from a petrol station on the main road. I called the police. I called my brother, who drove out from the city at 6 in the morning and found me in the petrol station car park, eating the service station pasty and crying in the specific controlled way of someone who has decided that crying is acceptable but has set a time limit on it.
The house. Declan, the house is alive. There are people in the walls.
He looked at me for a long moment, in the way that people look at you when they're deciding whether to be worried about your mental state or just sort out the practical situation.
Right. You're coming home. I'll call work.
He didn't ask about the house. Not then. He took me home, made me tea, and let me sleep for 11 hours in the spare room. I told him the full story later, and he listened to all of it, which is more than I expected. A housing inspector visited Veyrick House the following Tuesday. I know because Theis rang me that evening to tell me, and I didn't answer, and she left a voicemail. The inspector found no structural issues, she said in her precise, unhurried voice. The property is in excellent condition. There's a new posting on the board of the Brackfeld Exchange, if you know anyone who might be suitable. I reported the voicemail to the police. They noted it. They revisited the house. They found nothing wrong. Beautiful old Victorian property, Mr. Theis, cooperative and charming. No sign of any previous housekeepers in the conventional sense. They asked about Gretchen Paller. No record of anyone by that name at the address. No missing persons report matching her description. The inspector's report noted one thing. At the very end, almost as a footnote, the front gate had a slight mechanism issue. It opened easily from the outside, requiring a good 2-second pull, but the inspector had difficulty opening it from the inside. Probably needed a locksmith, the report said. Nothing to worry about. I think about what I thought I was doing those 3 weeks in Veyrick House. I thought I was solving it. I thought the notebook was a gift, evidence, data, something to work with. I thought understanding the corridor measurements, understanding the timeline, understanding the wallpaper figures and the absorption process and the basement's pulsing walls would give me an advantage. It didn't. The house needed me to understand it. That's how it works. It shows you things. It lets you find the notebook. It lets you measure the corridor and document the faces and open the basement door and see everything there is to see. All of that is the process. All of that is what it's feeding on. Gretchen understood everything. She's in the east wall. I got out because I stopped trying to understand and just left through a window I hadn't been looking at. The south window. The one that wasn't part of the investigation. The one I'd walked past every day without opening because I was too busy looking at the north window with its impossible garden and its impossible afternoon light. I've thought about this a lot. The house wanted me looking at the north window. The north window is the interesting one, the wrong one, the one that demands explanation. The south window is just a window. It shows you the south side of the house. Leaves on a path, October cold, nothing remarkable. The thing that saves you is never the thing you've been staring at. My ankle took 3 weeks to heal. I got a new job, office manager again, proper commute, fluorescent lights, the usual. The pay is less than Veyrich House, but the walls don't breathe, and the windows show what's actually outside them, which I've come to appreciate. I still have the notebook. I kept it. I probably shouldn't have kept it. Possibly there are people who should read it who haven't. Possibly Gretchen Paller has family who'd want it back. I've thought about sending it to the police again, though last time they weren't sure what to do with it. I've added one entry at the back, under Gretchen's floor plan diagram with the circled south window. 5 words, in case whoever finds the notebook after me doesn't bother reading the whole thing. South window. Don't understand. Run. My brother asked me once if I'd go back. Not seriously. He was making conversation, processing, whether I'd ever go near Mallow Lane again.
So you'd never.
I would set myself on fire first. And I'm not being dramatic.
He laughed. I didn't, quite, but almost. The Brackfeld Labour Exchange still has the posting on the corkboard. I know because a friend of a friend mentioned it. They'd been to the exchange, seen the ad, thought about applying. Competitive rates, 4 days a week, discretion appreciated. They didn't take the job. I made sure they didn't take the job. Veyrich House is still standing at the end of Mallow Lane. Still beautiful, still patient. The wisteria will be blooming by spring. The kitchen will smell of old cooking and something faintly sweet beneath. The north window will show its impossible garden in its impossible afternoon light. And somewhere inside the east wing corridor, 3 inches longer than it was last month, the wallpaper figures will have turned, just slightly, to face whatever new direction is interesting to them. And the walls will be warm.